Hey yo, so today I want to talk about judging people, judgment, and just all of that in general, right? Um, First, I want to say this: we all judge. We do because we all have a way of thinking, right? So if there's somebody else who thinks differently than you, or acts differently than you, or acts in a way that goes, I guess, against how you think is the best way to act, it may not be outwardly, but maybe internally, you are judging that person, right? But oftentimes we also do so outwardly, right? Okay, cool. And so now to clarify, the definition of judgment, judging, all of that is to form an opinion or conclusion on something, right? And so one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this and why I've been thinking about it is because, I've been told, people have said that it is bad to judge. Okay. Now, oftentimes the people that say that are religious people, and those people tend to go to scripture and say, "Here, look, here in scripture it says that you shouldn't judge." Okay, so allow me to break that apart just a little bit. The most common verse that is used to make that argument in scripture is Romans 2:1. Okay, to give some context, Paul the apostle is writing a letter to the I don't remember exactly. I believe it's like all of the the priests in like the churches in this specific area in Rome, something like that. Again, don't quote me there. And to clarify, by the way, I am not a biblical scholar nor a historian. But what I do try to do is whenever somebody tells me something from scripture, like, hey, this is that, that is this, I do my due diligence of going into scripture and doing, word study and making sure that I understand it for what it's supposed to be, not for what somebody interpreted by just taking a verse out of context. Okay, cool. Anyways, the point of what I'm saying with that is the most common verse that is used in scripture to say judgment is bad, because here's what it says in scripture is Romans 2:1. And it says something along the lines of like, you who are condemned for judging others when you yourself do this thing. And that's the point that I want to get across. If you read, that is again 2:1, chapter 2, verse 1. When you read the first chapter, understanding that when scripture was written, it wasn't broken down into chapters. That was done later on in the future. But if you follow from chapter 1 to chapter 2, you see the fact that Paul is trying to say to those people of the church, the priests or whoever they are, the higher ups, he's saying to them like, hey, you know and that, again, I this is my interpretation based off of my understanding of you know the entirety of that chapter, those chapters. But Paul is trying to say, in essence, from my interpretation and my word studies of that chapter and those chapters, is he's telling them like, hey, look, you are in a position where you are gonna judge, right? You're a priest. You're supposed to follow certain you know rules, laws, or whatever. But here's what he's saying though. In that specific verse, he's saying, hey, you that judge others, yet do those things that which you are judging of, or that you're judging others for, you are condemned. And we all know that to be true. If you're going to judge somebody for doing something that you yourself are doing, that is not a good thing. Right. Okay. And so he's telling them like, hey, stop. In essence, this is how my interpretation of it is stop putting yourself on a pedestal. Like, yes, you are a priest, and you're supposed to be this figure to look up to, right? But you are a sinner. You are flawed. You are not perfect, right? We all deserve to be judged by the supreme being, God, who is all perfect, right? So that's what in essence he's saying. So he is not saying in that specific verse, judgment it's bad in and of itself. He is saying, in essence, the form in which you conduct the judgment. And one of those bad forms to conduct judgment is when you yourself are doing the thing that you're judging on, right? Okay. So I just want to get that clarified. Now, again, I started by saying that we all judge, right? We do. And again, you can argue that, you can disagree with that, that's fine. But if you have a certain way that you think things should be, or you think a certain way, whatever, and somebody else doesn't think that way or doesn't act the way that you think is appropriate, whatever, I mean, call it what you want to call it, but you're judging them, right? But I think the key is how we judge. Okay. So I'm gonna mention two stories, personal stories. Yeah, one of them in an attempt to kind of show like I guess a good way of judging others and a bad way of judging others, but just bear with me. So the first one is kind of really what really had me getting into this train of thought of like, is judging bad? Why shouldn't I judge? If I shouldn't judge, how can I avoid judging and all of that, right? Okay. So, and also in terms of the scripture thing, again, I'm not a biblical scholar, but I've looked at other verses and chapters that are in relation to judging, and from what I can tell, and I haven't looked at everything that is in relating to judgment and judging, so there's that. But from what I can tell, scripture is not condemning judgment in and of itself. It's just condemning, like, it's not even condemning at all times, but it's just kind of expressing how to judge and how not to judge, and why you should, why you shouldn't, blah 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 blah. Anyways, so here's the two stories though. So the first one, again, is kind of like what really got me into my thoughts of all of this. So I was talking to one of my friends about this girl that I had met, and she was into me, and I was telling him, in more detail that I'm not going to really share in this video, but I was just telling him, like, she was cool, we vibe, she was good people, what have you. However, she was into me and she liked me, but I had no desire to pursue anything intimate and serious with her, because of the fact that the way she thought and the way she acted and was, the way who she is and what have you, it's just not, it didn't correlate with the way that I think and the way that I am. Okay. Now, I wasn't saying that that's bad, that she's a bad person or anything like that. No. But I was just telling my friend, I was like, for X, Y, and Z reason, I don't have a desire to pursue anything intimate or serious with her, because that doesn't match up for us, or at least for me, I guess. And then my friend, he said to me, he was like, dude, why are you being so judgmental? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you're being very judgmental, like, like, lay back, like, give her a chance, this and that. Now, mind you, my friend, like, he thinks I'm as single as a Pringle, but besides the point, like, so he was just kind of like, dude, like, this girl likes you, like, why not go for it? And stop judging her so much. And I was like thinking to myself, like, okay, am I doing something bad? Like, like, does he have a point? Like, because, that it really got me in my thoughts. And so, I thought about it for some time, and here's my opinion. Now, I want to clarify, remember, the definition of judgment is to form an opinion or a conclusion on something. So, and I do think opinion is the best, is the most appropriate term to be used when it comes to our judgment. And I'll get to that in a second. But my opinion is that the way that I was judging her, because I was judging her, but I was doing it in such a way that was not, like, I had no malintent. I wasn't trying to say words that were intending to hurt her in any way. I was just expressing, again, an opinion and why I felt like this is not something that I wanted to pursue intimately. And so, okay, so there's that story. Now, that's an example of what I feel is, like, an appropriate, let's say, or not a bad way of judging others. Again, we all judge, whether we want to agree to disagree, whatever, but we all judge. Now, what would be not an inappropriate way of judging others? Okay, so I was having a conversation with somebody, and this person was talking about another individual. And in essence, this other individual that this person was talking about doesn't believe in God. Okay, they don't believe in Bible and all of that. Fine. Now, the person that was talking to me about other person was speaking about other person in such a way that was, at least it came off to me, very like they were attacking them, very like hateful, very malicious. I mean, they made comments about the person that were not nice, let's say, right? And so I told them, I mentioned to them that I don't like the way that they are speaking of this person, and I just don't like it. And they said to me, because I told them, I was like, I think the way that you're talking about them is inappropriate. And they were like, well, aren't you a believer of God? And I was like, yes, I am. However, that doesn't mean that just because I'm a believer of God, that I need to put myself on a pedestal. That doesn't mean that you, because you believe in God, that you are superior to this person, which is kind of how I felt that they were talking about them. Like, oh, you don't believe in God, shun you, like you are a disgrace or what have you. Like, what's wrong with you? That's what it felt like for me, and the way they were talking about this person. And that's one of the reasons. Anyway, no, never mind. I'm not gonna say that. So I didn't like that. And again, so they were like, yeah, but again, and they were, and from their perspective, they were like, but I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm speaking the truth, this and that and this. And I said to them, I was like, okay, look, like you said, I am a believer of God, right? Like that is matter of fact. And I myself do judge this person in regards to the fact that I disagree, or I think that they are, I guess, wrong. And again, that's an opinion, right? But I would argue an opinion of mine would be that they are wrong in choosing to not believe in a God. But again, that's an opinion. Now, let me say this. So I mentioned that the definition of judging is to form an opinion or a conclusion on something. And I mentioned that I think opinion is the best term there. The reason I said that and why I don't think conclusion is appropriate. Who are you? Who am I to be able to say like, hey, my judgment of this, whatever that may be, is conclusive, and that's that. For real, like, who are you as an individual to be able to make to make a conclusive statement when you yourself don't know the full story to be able to appropriately form a conclusive statement? The only person that can appropriately make a conclusive statement on anything that we do is God, because He knows everything, not us, right? And so I was telling this person, I was like, look, I don't agree with them not believing in God. Okay, so naturally I will judge them to some extent, but I'm not gonna judge them with words of like, with words of poison, like words that are, if I say these words to this person, it's gonna be evident that I am intending to hurt them and make them feel bad. Like when I spoke the words about that girl, I wasn't saying these words in a way that I was wanting to like make her come off as bad, or that if I were to say it to her in person would make her feel bad, at least not intentionally, right? And so I was telling her, I was like, look, the way you're talking about them is like you're putting yourself on a pedestal. Like, yeah, you believe in God. Congratulations. Are you perfect? You believe in God? Cool. Fantastic. Are you perfect? Are you flawless? Are you lacking in sin? No. And again, that goes back to what Paul was trying to say to the priests. He's like, hey, you're judging these people in such a way where it's like you yourself are doing wrong. You yourself are sinning. You yourself are not, you're not perfect. You're flawed. We all are, right? And so, okay. So there's that. How do I wrap this up? Okay. Here's my point. First and foremost, as I said, Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. We all judge. And if you disagree with that, fine. You can be delusional. But if we all judge, if there's somebody who does something or thinks differently than we do, we're going to judge them one way or another, right? Internally, externally, whatever. Okay. Is judging bad? It can be. It can be. So how do we work around that? Well, for me, how I do it is, first and foremost, I understand that my judgments they're opinionated. Why? Well, because one, I'm not perfect, so what do I know? Two, our judgments change. They change all the time. I mean, I used to love playing video games. I was addicted to it, and I thought that everybody should play video games. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong if you play video games, but I have a judgment, I guess, or an opinion on the fact that there are many people, not everyone, but there are many people who play video games that do it in such a way that is harmful to them, meaning like it doesn't help them move forward in any way. If anything, it's hindering them in some shape, way, or form. They're choosing to play video games instead of doing things that are better for them, right? So that's an opinion, an opinionated judgment of said individuals. Okay, but my judgment has changed. Our judgment changes because we are imperfect, right? So I think an opinion on something is appropriate. Now, what about a conclusion on something? I mean, we need to be careful when we make conclusive judgments. Because what do we know? For real, what do we know? We're so imperfect. I mean, we can't even do or not do the things that we know that are, we know sugar is not good for us. Yet, so many of us just eat away at it and have no control of our own actions. Or, we know that going to the gym is good for us, and yet so many of us don't do it, even though when we know that's in our best interest. You know what I mean? So now, again, for example, like killing others, killing another person. We can all conclude, I hope, that that's a bad thing. A thing that shouldn't be done. Right? And then, of course, the issue after that is like, what happens to the person that killed somebody? What do we do there? Very complex. That's a whole conversation for a different day. But nonetheless, outside of an extreme like that, we need to be careful when we make conclusive judgments. Because who are you? Like, what authority do you have to be able to say this is that and you can't argue it? Now, the last thing I'll say to wrap it all up is this. So as I said, first and foremost, we all judge. Secondly, we need to be careful about conclusive judgments and realize that and the fact of the matter is most of our judgments are opinionated. And then 3, what is the best way to then judge? If we even need to, right? Because I'm not trying to say like, hey, we should all judge, like that's the way to go. No. I'm just making it clear that we do judge. So if you say you don't, you're delusional. But then again, from there, it's like, okay, well, what's the best way to judge? And here's what I would say. Don't judge people thinking you are better than them. I would say, I don't care, unless you're Jesus, which nobody is. You have no right to judge people on the basis that you think you know better than them. Maybe you do, maybe, but you shouldn't be the one to conclude that. Let God do that. As I was saying about the second story, about this person who was judging that other person because they don't believe in God, I said to them, I was like, look, your judgment of them is, to me at least, the way it's coming off is in such a way that you think you're better than them. But are you? The answer is no. They didn't answer the question, but but are you? No, of course not. You are flawed. You have plenty of issues. Yes, you believe in a God, congratulations, but that doesn't mean that you are perfect in any way. Okay? Now, the way that I am judging that person, the way that I did judge that person, is that even though they don't believe in the same thing that I believe, and I think that that is not a good way of going about life, it does, like, the conclusive judgment of whether or not she should believe in God or not, I leave that to God to hash out with her when that time comes, right? My job simply is to love people. If I have to form a judgment on somebody, or if I decide to form a judgment on somebody, I'm going to do it in such a way to where, one, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal where I think I'm superior than them. And then two, doing it in such a way where, it comes from sincerity, from it just as a sincere opinion of what I think of them, right? But again, it's doing it in such a way where I don't desire there to be any malintent, any hatred. If anything, I wanted to come across in love. Like, hey, you don't believe in the same thing I believe, and again, I disagree with you, but that doesn't mean I can't love you. Like, I can love you. I can love anybody. And that's how it should be, but that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But again, that's a more appropriate, I would say, way of forming a judgment on somebody than, putting yourself on a pedestal thinking that you're better than them. Because good luck with that. Because at the end of the day, the only individual who can form an appropriate and righteous conclusive judgment on somebody is God. Why? Because he knows everything. In the example of killing somebody, he not only knows why somebody killed somebody, but he knows like the inner workings of that individual that led to them killing that person. So only God would be able to form the most appropriate judgment on any of us, right? So that's pretty much it. We all judge. Be careful about forming conclusive judgments. Really, most of our judgments are opinionated, and at the end of the day as well, if you're going to judge somebody, don't put yourself on a pedestal. God is the only one who can make the ultimate judgment on anything that we do and anything that we say. All that we can do is, again, have an opinion. Sure, that's fine. I would argue there's nothing wrong with that. That's just an innate human nature. It's innately human nature. I don't know if that, whatever. But again, come at it with love, because that's what Jesus wants us to do, right? Not be like, oh, I believe in God, so shun you and look down on you. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna cut it when you're face to face with your creator. But time will tell, I suppose. Anyways, that's all I got. Hopefully it made sense and it was helpful. So God bless.